Welcome to React today. We hope to react today to some issues that concern the world. It's not only the war in Iran and this urgent need by the Americans to start a war against Iran in order to control the Middle East for the Israel people. Okay, that's another issue. We're going to talk today, thanks to God, that Hillary Clinton didn't win the presidency, and otherwise we would have been at war a long time ago. Today we're going to speak about a country that has influenced the rest of the world in many ways. We don't see it properly, but it does, and it has. Its name is Colombia. Colombia is a famous country around the world because of the cocaine production. This is a product that has a spread all around the world, and Colombia it's been known to be the biggest producer of this commodity, let's say, because in terms of markets and trade, it's a commodity. If it wasn't a commodity, there will be no such demand for this product. But it does exist, and it does influence all countries in the world because it has been proven time and again that cocaine is one, if not the most used drug in the world. It's pretty common, very expensive, $100 some places in the United States. Some places like Australia can reach a price of $300 a gram. That's very expensive stuff. So the demand has increased. Instead of decreasing, it has increased. So it's an issue that we have to accept. Because of this product that this country produces, the world has been accused of consuming a substance that apparently is killing a lot of people. The fact is that alcohol and cigarettes, but especially cigarettes, kill way more people than all drugs combined. This, according to LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, which is composed by retired officemen and policemen that don't agree with the policies of prohibition at all. So we're going to step today into Colombia. What is it about Colombia? That's still 40 years later. It's been put the finger by the United States, of course, and its failed policy for a war against drugs, and its insistence to fumigate with glyphosate this country. It doesn't matter what the scientific approaches have proven about glyphosate, but even though if glyphosate itself is not the killer, it is the combination of different ingredients with the glyphosate, which is known as Roundup or on other products by Monsanto. This is a very discredited corporation. And the business is booming, but not the business of getting rid of the cocaine, because nobody wants to get rid of the cocaine. That's a fact. They want to keep on using it as a commodity in order to produce black budgets, underground budgets, which we're talking about $500 billion a year. That's big money. And when you need budget to procure armament, to procure cues in other countries, to destabilize other countries, where the money come from is from these kind of products and communities. But they don't accept that it's a commodity because it is a commodity. People demand this product, especially in the United States and Europe, which are the more and the biggest of this product in the world. Colombia. Today we're going to speak about it. Welcome. One of the issues that we have to speak about today is land. And that is, and it will be, the main problem of that country. There's no agrarian reform. It never has been in the 200 years that this year, on July the 20th, 200 years ago, somebody's yelled independence, and August the 7th, 1819, Colombia, with other countries, Mexico and others, earned their liberty from Spain. But it didn't change anything. The only thing that changed was the people that went to power, because the corruption and personal interests of the elites the criollos, established an oligarchian way to deal with the country. After 200 years, land is the basic thing that you have to think about when it comes to Colombia, and why, after the peace process was uh, mm, accepted by the international community, by the Colombian president and the guerrillas of the FARC, the revolutionary armed forces of Colombia. In 2016, things had not changed at all. Despite the fact that there was a peace process and that the president of Colombia, Mr. Juan Manuel Santos, was awarded the Peace Nobel Prize, there's no peace in that country. On the contrary, the FARC are moved from this scenario. So what they have now is a lot of land in order to cultivate cocaine. And guess who's taking up those land that the FARC guerrillas left behind? The Mexican cartels, the Russians, the Brazilians. All kinds of people are getting into that country in order to grab as much land as they can. And they're using now paramilitary groups. Well, the paramilitaries were first introduced by a Jewish, Israeli, how do you say it, entrepreneurs, or these kind of people that use war in order to make money and profit from them. And he trained, that is Jair Klein, that colonel, he trained the first paramilitary people for Colombia. And I was surprised in 2016 and 2015, during the peace process in La Habana, that Israel was called to the table in order to reach the peace agreement of the country. There's 9 bases in the territory of Colombia, 9 American bases in different places, strategically positioned in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, in the middle, in the east, of course, close to Venezuela. 9 bases. And still, that country is under siege by systematic assassinations of the poorest people in the world, which is its peasants, its minorities, the black people, the black communities, the indigenous people, peasants, of course, and they're taking the land away from them. In the peace treaty, the fact was that they were supposed, the government itself, after the peace treaty, they have to return 10 million hectares or 7 million hectares of land to the people that rightfully own this land, because we're talking about 7 million people displaced in this country. But we're going to get to the numbers later. After the peace process, now that the FARC is not anymore in this scenario, in the land, everybody wants the land itself in order to conquer it. I'm speaking about politicians, congressmen, and of course, Colombia has one of the most corrupted governments in the world, if not the most corrupted government in the world, according to Senator Jorge Robledo, who has explained in detail all these issues. The practice of privatization as the way out for every single problem that this country has, which has proven also that to privatize corporations is not a guarantee of better management, because that is the excuse. Privatization is better for business because we are smarter people, we can handle things out better than a socialist or a government intervened corporation, and it has been proven totally false in Central and South America, but especially in Colombia, which we are taking and talking about today. One of the examples is, for example, this refinery in Cartagena. It's a beautiful place, a beautiful city in the Atlantic. It used to be a historical patrimony of humanity, not anymore. Lots of prostitution, stuff that is killing the tourism there. Still a beautiful city. And the problem is that this refinery was budgeted for $4 billion. A private corporation came to take charge of the situation and the development of the refinery. Guess what? It didn't work with $4 billion. It ended up costing $8 billion, and nobody knows why. The President Juan Manuel Santos, which has his hands on this touch of the privatization of by corporations in Colombia, He washed his hands. The same is the president before him, who has everything to do with it, wash their hands. And to make things worse, there's many corporations when it comes to health, because of the 100 uh, law which was passed, which is to privatize Medicare in the country. This is one of the poorest countries in the world. People cannot afford medicine or Medicare at all. And with 7 million people displaced, you can imagine how tough it is to live in that country. So land. When the FARC are gone and the cartels are taking over, who is the more affected people? The Colombian people. They're privatizing even the marijuana. It's being taken over by corporations, foreign corporations that are now investing millions of dollars in what Colombian people paid with blood and bombs and assassinations during the 80s. The displacement of people, the systematic assassination of opposition against these elites of government that are nothing but families and landowners and grabbers, like I said, including government and senators that are part of the problem. 60 senators were found guilty because they have attachments with paramilitary groups in the 90s. All after Mr. Uribe, who's the eternal president according to its party, the Democratic Center. He's an eternal president. He's going to be a president forever. It's like they took Jesus down from the cross and they put Uribe on the cross. And he has 12 apostles. We already know about the 12 apostles of Mr. Uribe and his brother. It was the name given to an assassinations organization who was led but helped, maybe not led, but helped by a priest who heard confessions, and he used the confessions of the people, normal guys, in order for the paramilitaries to grab their land to commit assassinations. So that's why it's called, among other issues, it was called the 12 Apostles. So yeah, this central party, the Democratic Center is called, has senators there that were involved in the appropriation of land and the giving of 6,000 million pesos to palm cultivators, which is a private owned corporation of people that invest some money in there, have money, displace other people, take over the land and start planting palm oil. Oil palm. All around the places. Monocultivism. Instead of diversifying the products that Colombia produces, Monsanto and the Minister of Agriculture there is giving all the possibilities for the corporations to patent the intellectual property of every product in the country. That means that they have no intention to give the 7 million hectares to the rightful owners. And one of those senators, Mrs. Cabal, is well known for being a traitor to the country, but also by trying to pass a law which is not giving the rightful owners their land back, that was taken by force by paramilitary groups or the guerrillas. She wants some people to buy land which doesn't belong to them, but to the peasants that were violently displaced from their own land. She wants some people that are also peasants to buy that land in order for her to say, well, they bought it in good faith. In good faith is enough. The only thing that they need to do, oh, I didn't know that land was taken over by force. Oh, I didn't know that. But he went to the registry office and he signed the paper and said, I bought this land. And that's it. He doesn't have to explain anything at all. And she's saying that the guy that did that should be protected by the government. In other words, fuck the proper owners, the landowners, the original owners who was displaced by violence, through violence and assassinations and killings. No, she wants whoever comes, another peasant, which might be used by landlords in order to keep buying more land all around the place without giving the righteous owners the land back. That's what she wants. Okay, and she's a person that it was proven to have bought in her campaign for senator. Thousands and thousands of votes were bought by her people, and she's still in her position as a senator. Not only that, a couple of weeks ago, there was an important bill that needed to pass in the Senate in order to control the corruption in government, because the corruption in government costs Colombians 50 billion pesos a year. And that is since we have memory of it. 50 billion pesos. If you keep in mind that the dollar price right now in Colombia is 3,200 pesos for a dollar. 3,200 pesos for a dollar. So, yeah, you can imagine. And now, Monsanto and the Minister of Defense, who has no clue about defense at all. He's not a strategist in military or anything like that. He's a commercial guy. He's a businessman. He is saying that everything is fine, that there's no problem, that there's business opportunity for investors to come to the country and grab the land that belongs to the peasants, because it's cultivable land, fertile land, beautiful land, that you can produce whatever you want instead of coca. And what happened is that the government in La Habana deal for peace promised to gave back this land. Is not happening. On the contrary, 500,000 people that are the army in Colombia, 500,000. That Colombia has one of the most numerous soldiers in the world, armies in the world. Where are they? They still killing and assassinating human rights watchers, union leaders, peasants that want to protect the environment and take them away from the landlords, the paramilitaries, and the corrupt people, Mexicans, Israelis, Canadians, Americans that come and buy large properties of land to create palm oil, to sow whatever they want, soy, whatever they can, genetically modified products. In the meantime, Colombian peasants are forced to take their food and bury it.
The days when we could think of each of our economies in isolation, those days are long gone.
Nuestros países han pasado de ser simples buenos amigos a convertirse en verdaderos aliados.
Both our nations have struggled to overcome a painful past. And that is proof that progress is possible.
Tenemos TLC con los Estados Unidos.
El presidente Obama nos ha cumplido.
El Tratado de Libre
Colombia,
Estados Unidos.
Un día histórico para
El
nuestro
gobierno
país.
cumple a mí, pero también el expresidente George W. Bush. Hacer un reconocimiento especial al expresidente Uribe.
El freno del TLC es el freno a la inversión.
A true Democrat, a strong leader, and a friend.
Un acceso permanente a la economía más grande del mundo.
Implica tener acceso a un mercado de
A más de 300 millones de consumidores, 250,000 puestos nuevos de trabajo.
500,000 de empleos en los próximos 5 años.
Pues más crecimiento económico, más empleo.
Que atrae más inversión y esa inversión se traduce en algo muy importante, más empleo. Es algo a lo que aspirábamos desde hace no 8 ni 10, hace más de 20 años.
Buscando hace cerca de 20 años.
Latin America is a part of the world where the economy is growing very quickly. And as these markets grow, so does their demand for goods and services. The question is, where are those goods and services going to come from? As president, I want to make sure these products are made in America.
Por Colombia, Campo Alegre.
Porque nosotros hemos venido bien. La rapidez con la cual
se aprobaron estas leyes no creo que tenga antecedentes.
¿Qué pasa? Y las personas, por favor, si no, toca ¿Estamos los qué? Sí, sáquelas. Ya me traído acá, ya me traído.
Nada de lo que se aprobó aquí es algo que no sea conveniente para Colombia, si no, no lo hubiéramos negociado.
Campo de Noticias cubriendo minuto a minuto este importante operativo que se desarrolla en Campo Alegre.
Todas las leyes que aquí se han aprobado es simplemente para ponernos a tono con la realidad internacional.
Because President Juan Manuel Santos, who won, he was awarded the Peace Prize, Nobel Prize, he decided to be smart by taking away the capability of his peasants, his own people, to sow and to reap all kinds of products that this beautiful country and land produces, only to replace them by force and taking them out by force from their land and to take their produce like rice, soy, lentils, you name it, to be replaced by the American corporations, Monsanto and others, Syngenta, you name it, which are in the board of the Agricultural Ministry.
Buenas, señores agricultores, qué situación más terrible la que vivimos. De parte de la corporación venimos a acompañar a estos agricultores. Intentamos buscar una solución a algunos clientes, pero no se puede. En este país el mercado está lleno, está copado, pero solo para las empresas grandes y los intermediarios. Hoy en una situación terrible, no puede ser que se esté sucediendo esto. Tomate de primera calidad hay que botarlo. Señores agricultores, si no nos unimos, este es el camino de todos, ya todos sabemos lo que está pasando, lo hemos denunciado como Ministerio de Agricultura, temas de importación siguen llegando y nosotros sumiéndonos cada vez en una pobreza más grande. De verdad que tenemos que acercarnos, señores agricultores, es la única opción que nos queda y no lo hagan por mí, sino háganlo por ustedes como agricultores. La corporación es la representación legal que tenemos y vamos a tener que hacerla valer.
That country has no way out if everything is just taken over by private corporations and private interests. And they speak of peace. In the meantime, hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in that conflict. The Democratic Center, which Mr. Uribe was president for, is losing a lot of popularity. But in Congress 2 weeks ago, they were to pass the corruption law, anti-corruption law, one of the many issues that were specified in the anti-corruption law to pass, where 11,700,000 Colombians went out to vote for the anti-corruption, which included, of course, no more than 3 terms for the Congress people, because congressmen are there by the votes, corrupt votes, and with the paramilitary people that work for them, they menace, you better vote for this guy or you're done and your family, and that happens all the time in that country. I wonder, 500,000 army people, one of the best armies in the world, 52 years at war, always wins more than, if there has been 12, how do you say that, the games of the Western Hemisphere, which 15, 20 armies of the world, including the United States, Central America, South America, compete in special forces in order to win the maximum prestige in combat abilities, personal combat tactics, operations, sharpshooters, you name it. Colombia has won more than 7 times out of 12. And the killing keeps on happening in that country, like there was no army at all. And the army has been found to be in cahoots with the paramilitary for decades now, since Mr. Uribe was president. So Mr. Donald Duque, Ivan Duque, went to England on a tour in Europe, 17 days on tour, speaking about the world possibilities of how we can do business in Colombia. He went to England, he went to Switzerland, he went to France, where he was criticized by many of the parliament people there for not supporting ecology, are not taking action on assassination, systematic assassination, because they say that is not systematic. This business person that is now Minister of Defense in that country says that is, and the one before him with President Santos, this is people that just get drunk and start fighting for a woman. These are skirts fights, and that's what it is. When you have ministers of defense that speak like that of the assassinations, systematic assassinations, we're talking about hundreds of these people since the peace treaty was signed. This is so irresponsible. To the point that when these that people voted for 11,700,000 guys went out to say, hey, no more corruption in this country, no more 50 billion a year, no more privatization of social matters or companies or corporations that can be handled by the state, no more than 3 terms for the Senates, watch out what the senators where they take the money from, and no house for prison awarded anymore for this kind of corrupt people. It didn't pass. In 8 months, it didn't pass. Since Mr. Duque is president, it didn't pass. And you know why? Because they were watching a football game. In all those 8 months, in the last 2 hours, the Ministry of Interior, or the Interior Ministry in that country, played a fool and didn't pass the bill. And they were watching the game, and they left the Congress meeting before time because they wanted to watch the game, and they bet who was going to win. And in the meantime, the bill didn't pass. It was not approved in Congress. That's how corrupt this Congress is. That's how banana republic this country is. And Mr. Ivan Duque comes from Europe in times where assassinations were still happening. There's assassinations every 2 days, according to very serious and responsible entities that investigate these issues in Colombia, in the voice and person of Ariel Avila, which is a guy who reports these events for many years now. So we're going to see a little numbers, and we're going to watch a couple of videos in order for you to understand that the cocaine is now being fumigated by glyphosate, thanks to this Minister of Defense and the corporations of America, which is going to make more than $600 million profit, benefiting for killing the water, destroying everything around it, and instead of giving the land to the peasants, where the rightful peasants, they want them away, and they want the land to be owned by American, British, that is European and American and Canadian corporations. Mining projects are booming there. And who is suffering? The water, the ecology, the land. That's what Colombia is. It's a prostitute. I'm not saying its people. Its people are dying there. There's no job opportunities except for the corrupt. There's an inoperate military army that doesn't work at all for its people, despite the fact that it's one of the best equipped armies in the world, the best trained armies in Central and South America, and now they're sending soldiers as an associate of the NATO. Corporations taking over, Mexican cartels, assassinations by the hundreds of thousands in the last 50 years. And you know what? The anti-corruption didn't pass. The government with the Democratic Center is the most corrupted government ever. You can't see that. And the army is inefficient when it comes to protect its own people. So what a person in my position can do, you might ask. Okay, we see this. But what is it that you're doing about it? Just going here and coming there, mister? They say, well, yeah, I did what a decent citizen in a foreign country could do, especially after I saw what people yelled at the president of Colombia when he went to London, calling him assassin. They were referring not only to him, but who owns him, which is President Uribe, as you will see in the video, where in Parliament, the British Parliament were saying this guy is a puppet for Mr. Uribe. What's going on in that country?
will be the cry to be poor. Only the rich have the right to live. The poor are systematically killed. President Duterte, life have value. Every
No se alcanza a ver. Sí, ese es el carro. No se alcanza a ver. Ahí está. Asesino. 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 Anybody. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino.
Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino. Asesino.
Qué emocionante ver. Tiene un inglés también. No.
Es la caravana de ingreso del presidente de Colombia. Acaba de ingresar a la reunión.
Around 8 million victims.
Sadly, today's panorama
is not as hopeful as before.
Peace building in Colombia
is facing severe dangers.
The implementation of the peace accords
is delayed and under attack. More than 130 FARC former guerrillas transitioning to civilian life have been assassinated.
Community leaders and human rights defenders
demanding the implementation of the peace accords
are being systematically killed.
The Colombian ombudsman registered 462 assassinations between January 2016 and February 2019.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights found that ethnic minorities
were specifically targeted.
The actions by the Colombian government remain timid, or even worse, counterproductive.
The international community, the UK included,
put its hopes and invested important resources into the peace process.
That's why we,
as British citizens,
as Colombians in the UK, as supporters of peace around the world,
are asking you to support the Early Day Motion 2232.
Please support the Early Day Motion and discuss the Colombian peace process in Parliament.
Please support the Early Day Motion and stand with human rights defenders in Colombia.
Dear MP, please don't let hope die.
We cannot have a climate of good business if this is happening. We all know that this is a political protocol to say things are going bad here and what are you going to do about that. But in reality, investments for England, United States, Canada, and European corporations is open for business. They want to give what is Colombian land for the peasants, more than 7 million, that have been displaced by bullets, by force. And the systematic assassinations, I'm talking about using automatic saws to cut the people alive. Colombia is ground for the devil. The devil walks free in that country, with the highest army in all Central and South America, who does nothing, and they have been found guilty of assassinations, especially by The Guardian, who spoke about 10,000 innocent people who were promised a job, put into trucks, and then taken to places to be killed while Mr. Uribe was president, in order to show the world that there was progress against the guerrilla, and it was a lie. Nowadays, we know that the confrontations between the paramilitaries and the guerrilla were very, very seldom, as the proven assassinations of those 10,000 kids between 14 and 21 years old, some older than that, were assassinated systematically by military persons. And 9 of those guys were ascended to better positions in the army now. 9 of them, all with investigations, pending investigations for the assassination of innocent people, false positives, as they know. What do a person like me can do when I see the world falling apart in that country where I'm from Colombia, I was born there? What should I do? Well, but any person, any decent person, in contact with reality, could have done an army of one.
We stand in solidarity with Germany, Italy, Poland, and France against the systematic assassination of human rights workers, human rights leadership, of human rights activists, in solidarity before the International Court of Justice today, April the 5th, 2019, against the systematic assassination of human rights leaders.
In solidarity with the International Court of Justice today, we oppose the systematic assassination of human rights activists and human rights leaders and unions in Colombia. We ask of the International Court of Justice to stop the systematic assassination of union workers, union leaders, and human rights activists in Colombia. In solidarity for the foreign members today in the International Court of Justice in Le Havre. Stop the systematic assassination of union leaders and human rights activists in Colombia. Stop the systematic corruption of the Attorney General and the systematic assassination of union leaders in Colombia, South America. Canada unites today with Europe in the International Court of Justice to stop the assassination of union leaders, union activists, and human rights activists in Colombia. In 2 years, 500 have been killed. In solidarity with the union leaders, the human rights leaders and activists who has been systematically assassinated, we are and stand here in solidarity with the International Court of Justice in The Hague today, April the 5th, 2019. Stop the systematic assassination of union leaders. Stop the systematic assassination of human rights activists in Colombia, South America. In 2 years, 500 union leaders, 500 human rights activists have been assassinated systematically in Colombia. We act today in solidarity with Europe in front of the International Court of Justice to pronounce ourselves against the systematic assassination of union leaders and human rights activists in Colombia. We Canadians, I as a Canadian, stand firm against the systematic assassination of human rights activists, union leaders, more than 500 in 2 years, systematically assassinated in Colombia. With the International Court of Justice, I and Canadians stand against the systematic assassination of human rights leaders and union leaders, as well as the corruption systematically advanced by politicians in this country. We stand against the systematic assassination of human rights leaders and union leaders in Colombia. We stand against the corruption and systematic governmental assassination of leadership of human rights activists in Colombia.
So when things like this happen, senators, people like this, keep on protecting the paramilitaries, where there's 9 bases of the Americans. You think this happens without Americans knowing all these years? Seems to me that wherever there's America, there's nothing but war, assassinations, killing fields, especially in Central and South America. For us, for the country, for the world. Hope to see you next time, and I'll leave you with what is going on in the world and who is the real terrorist and who is supporting whom here. Who's supporting real terrorism around the world? I guess you can guess. For us, for the country, for the world. Hope to see you next time in the next edition of React Today. Au revoir.